Welcome back, friends. I know it's been a while since my last upload, but I'm back with another video. This is a take on the low country boil that we've done before. This time it's going to have a creamy twist to it. Take a look at this. As you can see, the crab boil has the same corn, sausage, shrimp, plus our crab leg clusters, and even the potatoes. But let's recap on how we got to this point. If you remember, the last boil we did, we had a garlic butter sauce. Again, same ingredients, we just used a different sauce. Same preparation as well. But what's different about this particular crab boil is that I actually used the leftover broth from the crab boil to create a creamy seafood sauce that's full of flavor. Check out my first video for all the specifics, but as a recap, here are some of the flavors that I used in that first video. I used my salt, the equivalent of 1 stick of butter, I used onion powder. It's about a half cup that I use for the large pot that I use. You use a smaller pot, less seasonings. Then I came with my garlic powder. I used smoked paprika. And I also used a little lemon pepper. And you can also slice lemons in there as well to get that lemon flavor. And the last thing was the concentrated crab boil mixture. And I only used 1 teaspoon because it's a very concentrated and strong mixture. And then I stirred it all up and got ready to add all of my seafood. So check out my low country boil video to get all the details on how to start with the low country boil. Now we want to look at how we made the cream sauce for this video. But before we get started, I always like to take an opportunity to remind everyone to subscribe to the channel, give a thumbs up if you like the videos, and share the videos with your friends. And also add a comment or a suggestion, which is actually why we're here today. I received a suggestion from one of my video viewers who asked about what it is that I do with the broth after I boil the seafood. And at that point, I hadn't really thought about it. So a shout out goes to AJ Phillip. AJ asked me about the possibility of making a cream sauce from the broth. And that's what I did. So AJ Phillip, thanks for the comment. Thanks for the suggestion. And here we go. Let's start with our ingredients. I started out with 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 cups of broth from the boil, whipping cream, 2 cups of that, 2 tablespoons of butter. I also used a roasting bag. They come 6 to a box, so if you want to do a little at a time, you'll have plenty of bags to do that. And I also used Parmesan cheese. That's optional, but I just like a little cheese in my sauce, but you don't have to use it. It's totally up to you. Okay, so one of the first things we want to do is to dissolve our flour. So I dissolved 1 tablespoon at a time, and I used the broth from the crab boil to dissolve the flour. So 1 cup of broth, 1 tablespoon of flour, and just take your time to pour that in. Stir it around and try to smooth out as many flour bubbles as you can. The goal is to smooth out all of the bubbles, but sometimes there may be little tiny bubbles left, but that's okay. So just take your time, stir. You may need to press some of the bubbles against the side of the cup or the measuring cup, whichever container you're going to use, to assist in smoothing out those flour bubbles. Once you get those flour bubbles smoothed out, you should have a creamy, silky looking flour and crab boil broth mixture. So take that smaller container and pour it into a larger container. In this case, I just used a larger measuring cup. Because what you're going to do is that whole process again. Now let's move on to step 2. Now that you've created your flour and broth mixture, you want to add 2 tablespoons of butter. You want to make sure that you create your flour and broth mixture first before starting to melt your butter. You don't want the butter to cook too long because it burns very easily, and if it gets too hot, it'll actually cook the flour mixture as opposed to blending in smoothly with the butter. You want to melt your butter over a medium heat, probably around a 4 or 5 depending on your stovetop. But keep your eye on the butter, and you want to make sure it melts down just to that last morsel before you add your flour mixture. After giving your butter a quick little stir, you want to start to slowly add your flour mixture. But if you'll notice at the bottom, a lot of the flour has settled there at the bottom. So give your flour and broth mixture a quick little stir to get that flour circulating in the broth. Once everything's well circulated, slowly pour it into your butter, stirring at the same time, and making sure the heat's not too hot so that it's cooking the flour. You should start to see the broth mixture thicken up a little bit, and just continue to stir. After a few minutes, you should start to see the flour and butter mixture thickening up quite nicely. Again, you want to make sure you keep your eye on this mixture over the heat because it does burn quickly if it's too high. So make sure you're monitoring the heat and the time that you're allowing your mixture to cook. The cooking time between these phases should be about 3 to 4 minutes, but that may depend on the type of stovetop you're using, whether it's electric, induction, or gas. So be mindful of that as you're cooking your sauce. Now you can see our sauce is thickening up very nicely. This is why you want to cook it on a medium heat so that everything can blend well and you don't have a lot of flour clumps or cooked flour clumps in your sauce. Now you're ready to start adding your cream to the mixture. I added 1 cup of the 2 cups at a time. So the first cup I added, pour it right in. Continue to stir while you're pouring and allow that mixture to heat up and thicken up. You want to make sure you're getting everything blended in well. Now that we have that nice creamy texture forming from our first cup of whipping cream, we want to go ahead and start to add our second cup of whipping cream. Again, continuing to stir as you pour, making sure that your heat is still on medium so it's not cooking too quickly. Just take your time, pour the cream in, and stir until you've gotten it all blended in with the original sauce. Now I think we have our sauce right where we want it. You always want to take a little consistency test. If your sauce is too thick, you can always add a little more broth to the sauce itself. However, if your sauce is too thin, you can also add a little more cream as well. And always remember to taste your sauce along the way. You want to make sure the sauce flavor is right where you want it. Yeah, I think we're ready to start saucing our seafood now. Now that we have our sauce just right, we're ready to start adding it to our seafood boil. As you can see, I've already put my seafood in a roasting bag, ready for the sauce to coat my seafood. Each one of these ladles is about a half cup, so I'm adding about 1.5 cups of sauce to the amount of seafood you see here. As you can see, getting the sauce in the bag may be a little tricky, and it may get a little messy if you aren't careful. But just try to get the sauce all over the seafood and some down to the bottom of the bag as well. And keep in mind, your sauce may be hot, your contents in the bag, the seafood, may be hot as well. But what you want to do is once you get your sauce in the bag, just like in the last video, just cinch the top. I usually give my bag a little twist, kind of tighten it up to make sure that the sauce doesn't leak out. And again, remember the bag may be hot. And just begin to toss that sauce all over the seafood. Now we're ready to pour our contents into the pan. As you can see, I sauced my potatoes separately because I didn't want them to break apart during the coating process. So now that all of our seafood has been coated, just dump the bag out into the pan. And as you're dumping it out, you want to make sure that you try to get all the sauce out of the bag as you can. So I just make sure I just pinch my fingers down the bag and slide them down and get all that sauce out of there. And my friends, you are ready to go. Ladies and gentlemen, you now have your Georgia Low Country boil made with a cream sauce that's been infused with the crab boil broth left over from the Low Country boil. Just as with the last video, you have all your shrimp, corn, snow crab clusters, potatoes, sausage. Again, the whole nine in this recipe, only now it's coated with a creamy sauce that's going to have a lot of flavor and it's going to be enjoyed by all. Also remember, if you don't want the sauce over all of your seafood at one time, you can also just drizzle it over the portions you want the sauce on. And you can also use it as a dipping sauce. Just have a bowl on the side and use it to dip your seafood in. There are lots of ways to enjoy this tasty dish. Later, I'll be coming up with a seafood pasta dish using the same sauce, so be on the lookout. Well, friends, that's it for this edition of Leisure Cooking at Home with Barry. And as always, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and give a thumbs up to the videos that you like, and share the videos with your friends and family. And as always, add your comments and suggestions. You'll never know if it might be your suggestion that I'll use in my next video. So thanks again for following. I hope to see you later on when I upload my next video, and have a great time with your creamy seafood low country boil. See you later.